Okay, all you people who are really good at overworking, who are really good at controlling every single tiny little detail about your life, and you just want to push harder to try and keep that control. But somehow, sometimes things slip through the cracks and you feel out of control. How do you stop this cycle? In today's episode, I'm sharing the little secrets about navigating stress without burning out. And it all starts with understanding something called your window of tolerance. I'll even take you on some of my mountain biking adventures and how, just through mountain biking, it helped expand my own window of tolerance and teach me more about emotional resilience and how that has helped me in other areas of my life. Welcome to Burnout Solutions, a podcast designed to help high achievers and healthcare professionals understand stress and how it can lead to burnout. Together, we'll explore how your brain and nervous system naturally work and why they sometimes hold you back, and how to overcome those challenges to fully enjoy the success you've worked so hard to create. I am your host, Mona Tippett, registered nurse, burnout coach, and resiliency educator. Hello and welcome back to Burnout Solutions. Today, we are going to talk a little bit about the window of tolerance. And I started talking about this in the last week's podcast with the Yerkes Dotson-Law. And a lot of these nervous system concepts overlap and work with each other. And I hope that you are learning more and more with these podcasts about your nervous system and that it's helping you understand your stress and understanding how you can work differently and not work harder. That's the goal of these podcasts, and to also understand human behavior. This nervous system information has just really helped me understand myself and how I act and how other people act. And it has just really changed my life and changed the lives of my clients. So I hope you are having some of those experiences. So let's just get on into it. What is your window of tolerance? Well, your window of tolerance is your nervous system's capacity to handle stress without freaking out. And that is just my very unscientific definition of it. But it's actually a personal bandwidth, let's say, of your stress and emotion. And when you're inside your window, you can manage what life throws at you without getting overwhelmed or shutting down. I use the term of being regulated and dysregulated a lot. And being inside your window of tolerance is really just being regulated and having a good amount of stress or eustress, like we talked about last week, in the moment. When you're outside of your window or dysregulated, you go from good stress or eustress to distress. And this is when your nervous system takes over and you move into survival mode or protection mode. I also like to think of being regulated as feeling like you have enough resources in the moment to meet your current demands. And that has helped me understand so much more about being inside my window of tolerance by having enough resources. The window of tolerance also has many synonyms, and maybe you've heard of some of these. So other names would be the zone of resilience, a window of flexibility, your optimal arousal zone. Some people even describe your window of tolerance as colors. So I've seen this in elementary school, like, are you ready to learn? Are you in the green zone? Or are you in the red or the yellow zone? Deb Dana, who talks a lot about polyvagal theory, she talks about your window of tolerance as really being your ventral vagal state or your safe and social state. It's where you are connected and curious and calm. Some people even describe the window of tolerance as a band of things that you can handle, which I also like that one. So really, any way you name it or any title that we give our window of tolerance, It's really just a range of arousal or stress where you can function well, function emotionally, physically, and mentally. And this is most importantly, in that zone, your brain and body respond to stressors without feeling too overwhelmed and too demanding, and your prefrontal cortex is functioning. That is key to being inside your window of tolerance. So let's use a temperature analogy to describe our range that we can tolerate. And I live in Idaho, and we have all 4 seasons here. I love Idaho. I love it. It's so beautiful here. It is spring. I was just driving my girls to school this morning and just looking at everything green and lush and beautiful and clear. And oh, I just love it. But in Idaho, the temperature ranges vastly. So we get sometimes below 0 and sometimes above 100 degrees Fahrenheit. So there's a huge range throughout the year that we experience. So I have acclimated to Idaho's temperature. Somebody who lives in a very temperate climate, such as Hawaii, where the temperature range is quite narrow, maybe 20 degrees or 15 degrees throughout the season and from morning until late at night. Because of the narrow range of temperature fluctuation, they are not acclimated as well to different temperatures. So if they were to come to Idaho in January when it's, say, 15 or 20 degrees, it would feel very cold to them and maybe be a shock to them. And they might have a hard time handling it because they are not used to that temperature. They don't have the resources to feel comfortable at 20 degrees. I, however, even if I don't feel like it's a comfortable temperature, I have the resources because I live here. I have warm socks. I have leggings that I wear underneath my clothes when it gets really cold. I have beanies. I have jackets. I have mittens. I have scarves. I have resources to keep me warm, and that temperature doesn't really faze me. I still go outside. I still live my regular life without much of a thought. Also, in the summer, when the temperature changes to 100 degrees, it might be inconvenient, but I also can handle it because I have the resources. I go to the pool. I go to the lake. I have central air conditioning in my house. And these resources help me tolerate the range in temperatures that I experience. Now, if I were to move to Hawaii, I might get rid of a lot of that clothing because I wouldn't be using those resources. I wouldn't need those resources anymore. And my body would likely acclimate to a more narrow range of temperatures. And so if I were to come back to Idaho when it is really hot or really cold, it would be hard for me to experience those temperatures and feel comfortable for a while until I reacclimated. So the key is that I have tools, I have habits, and I have support that help me handle the temperature ranges. And this is exactly what we need to help us stay within our window of tolerance when life heats up or cools down. Each of us has our own window of tolerance and our own capacity to handle stress. So maybe you're curious as to how that window of tolerance even gets developed. Well, it is made up of several different criteria. And the first is our childhood experiences. When we are younger than 7, our brain waves are different, and our conscious and our subconscious are closely connected. And this information comes from What Happened to You by Dr. Bruce Perry. And he talks a lot about our neurological blueprint and has done a lot of research on this. But our nervous system is very impressionable between the years of 0 to 7. And those experiences in our life make a huge difference in our window of tolerance. During those years, we are taught what is normal, what is not normal. We are taught how to understand the world and the part that we play in the world. We are taught how to communicate. We are taught how to understand our emotions and if we're loved and cared for. And those years are huge. And even siblings that are raised in the same household can have extremely different perceptions based on their personality. Our window of tolerance is also shaped by our neurobiology and our neurodiversity, our genetics. It's also shaped by the current environment that we are in and the social supports that we have or that we lack. Trauma is huge in someone's window of tolerance, and this is big T trauma as well as little t trauma. And also, our current physical condition can really affect our window of tolerance. If we are sick, if we are really tired, if we're going through cancer or a divorce or a major life change, it dramatically affects our window of tolerance. I also wanted to mention that you can learn coping skills. You can learn how to expand your window of tolerance and be able to handle stress better. And I personally believe that the larger your bandwidth is and the larger your window of tolerance and your zone of resilience is, and you have more resources, you can handle stress better. And I believe when you can handle stress better, you have a better work life, you have a better family life, and life just goes a little bit better. So now that we know about what our window of tolerance is, how can we expand that window? How can we grow that capacity to stay present, to handle stress better, even when life gets tough or heats up or cools down? And I wanted to take a minute to tell a story about when I first started mountain biking. This was during COVID, and I'm 40 years old. I had never mountain biked before. I really didn't have any skills. I could ride a bike, but I wasn't great at it. And if you put me on a rocky trail that had switchbacks, my body would lock up, my heart would race. I would often hop off the bike and either push the bike up or down. And I also wasn't conditioned, even though I've exercised my entire life and I really like being fit and exercising. Mountain biking was totally different. And so when I would go with people, I had a hard time keeping up. And it was exhausting. I remember one day I had to pull off to the side of the trail because I was so nauseous. I felt like I was going to vomit. And it was just a whole new experience for me. I couldn't keep up with the group. I didn't have the right equipment. I didn't have a good bike. I didn't have specific shoes. I didn't know there were specific shoes and shorts and equipment that would help me be a better biker. And so in hindsight, when I started, I was clearly way outside my window of tolerance for mountain biking, both physically and emotionally. However, over time, as I kept showing up and I kept practicing and learning how to tune into my body instead of fighting it, I started to build skills. I also started to rack up my resources. So I got a better bike. I got a bike that fit me. I got a bike that had a seat dropper. This is huge because when you are riding up, you want your center of gravity to help you pedal up. And when you go down, you want your seat to drop so that you can lean back a little bit better and feel more stable and comfortable on the bike. I also got padded shorts so that after I was riding, my butt wouldn't hurt as much. I got breathable shirts. I got mountain biking shoes that stuck to my pedals so I could pedal better. I got a better helmet. I also have learned to bring extra resources with me in case of emergency. I have gone enough that I've acclimated and can keep up with the group. I can balance better. I know how to brake better. I can handle the corners better. I'm by far not the best mountain biker, but I can go through rivers and trails that are hard. I can go over rocks. I can go over bridges. So I'm much better at biking than I used to be. And I have massively expanded my physical window of tolerance when it comes to mountain biking. Also expanded my emotional window of tolerance. And I would tell people that mountain biking was my brain training because when I was young, I was taught that adrenaline was scary and fearful. And so when my body feels adrenaline, It tells me, this is scary. I'm going to die. When I come down a hill, I would practice my nervous system regulation skills. In that moment, relax my body and tell my nervous system that I was safe. And I learned how to breathe through fear, and I could stay curious instead of critical. I learned that adrenaline wasn't scary and I could handle it. So through mountain biking, it has been amazing to be able to expand both my physical window of tolerance and my emotional window of tolerance. And that's really what we're doing when we're practicing self-regulation. We're not just getting better at handling stress, but we're building the inner resources to ride the trails of life with more confidence, more agility, more peace, and just being able to handle things that come up. Which brings me to something that Dan Siegel talked about. And he gives an acronym of what it looks like to stay inside your window. And the acronym is FACES, FACES. So he says when we are inside our window of tolerance, we are flexible, adaptive, coherent, energized, and stable. So let's apply FACES to the situation with my mountain biking. The first is flexible. Now I can bike in lots of different terrain. I can go on rocks, I can go on sand, I can go in the rain. I've gone through rivers, mud, up and down, rocks, and I can bike with people who are on many different levels of mountain biking. Adaptive. I can physically adapt to changes, and I have also helped my bike adapt with my seat dropper because it is very important, I think, to have your seat lower when you go down. Also coherent. I have the experience of mountain biking, and I know logically how to prepare and what I will need. And I coherently know what to do in an emergency. Energized, I have snacks, I have liquid IV to keep my energy up. And I know my body now when I go mountain biking. And stable. I know when to pedal. I know what to do going down. I know how to adjust my body. And I can now go on a cliff, and it's not nearly as nerve-wracking as it used to be. So now we're going to shift gears and explore what it looks like to be inside the window, what it looks like to be going towards the edges of our window, and what it looks like to go completely outside your window of tolerance. And this is essentially polyvagal theory and the Yerkes-Dodson law, again, all intermingled with our window of tolerance. So when we are inside our window of tolerance, like Dan Siegel talked about with his acronym FACES, we are flexible, we are adaptive, we are coherent, we have the right amount of energy, and we are stable. And most importantly, our prefrontal cortex is working, and we can converse with other people. We are reading their signals and they are reading ours. We are good at problem solving, and we are rational. As we get an increase of energy, however, this is where we approach the edges of our window. And as we reach the edge, our prefrontal cortex is still working, but we have a lot more energy. And that energy takes us to do different things. This is where people get either assertive or they get really passionate about what they're talking about. Some would even say more dramatic about the situation. Some people are a really good advocate for themselves. They speak up in conflict. They also can be looking for extra support, right? Searching their resources, looking for something that will help them get through this situation or handle it. Often people get a little more anxious, irritated, upset, frustrated, and overwhelmed. And once they reach the anxious or irritated, frustrated, or overwhelmed, they can quickly slip outside of the window. When we go outside of the window, that is when our nervous system takes over and we are going into fight, flight, freeze, or shut down. And what does that look like? When we are in fight mode, we are snappy, sharp, controlling. People might say, this is when they use their power move, or we try and take over and steamroll over people. My nervous system's home away from home is in fight mode. This is what mode I know very well. So I have been accused of being a controller and a power mover, and that is not incorrect. But somebody likes me likes to think and do and act like, hey, I have tried being nice here. I have tried allowing this situation to go on, but now I'm taking the wheel because obviously this is not happening in the way that I want to. And this isn't really about being mean or vindictive or accusing people of not doing things correctly, but it's really just an attempt to, from a neurological standpoint, to establish control and take safety and saying, I'm taking the wheel, I'm taking control of this situation. And why does that make me feel better? Because it helps reestablish safety inside myself. My nervous system feels better because I know it can be handled in a way that, in my opinion, is the best. Some people flee or flight, and this is where it's avoidance. This is doom scrolling. This is shopping. This is when you're skipping out on connection, trying to escape into some sort of distraction, video games, pornography. Overworking is one type of avoidance and fleeing. Sometimes people don't even come home until the family's gone to bed because they want to avoid or flee a situation that they're not ready to handle. Let's talk about freezing now. Freezing is still on the outside edge of the top of the window, and this is where your gas is on full throttle and your emergency brake is also on. People have described this as deer in the headlights. Some people say, I don't know a lot, or they just stop talking. And sometimes in a situation with a steamroller like me and somebody who's not talking, the steamroller can think, oh, good, now they're finally listening. But really, the person that has stopped is frantic inside and panicky, and they could be mentally spiraling, but they're just silent because they can't really process what's going on. And when we say, I don't know, it actually gives your brain permission to stop looking for solutions and to continue to shut down, which brings us to the bottom of the edge of the window or outside the bottom of the window, which is emotional shutdown. So again, the stress is increasing. The nervous system is continuing to go down and take more control and shut down. And when we are in actual emotional shutdown, this is where we think, I don't care, and I don't care that I don't care. This is thinking there's no point in me doing anything because I'm not going to be able to solve this problem. This can look a little bit more like logic and less emotion because our nervous system and your brain is actually trying to conserve energy and withdraw. So the emotion comes offline and the logic is there's nothing to do here, so let's shut down. This is where true burnout occurs. And emotional shutdown can look a lot like laziness, but it is not. It's just that somebody is stuck in survival mode. So when we can look and notice when we are inside our window of tolerance and understand how we personally act as we reach the edges, I know that that awareness helps me understand how to stay inside my window of tolerance. So I just wanted to give a few more examples of what it can look like to be outside of our window of tolerance on the edges and on the inside with some situations that I've experienced working in healthcare. And the first was I used to do this all the time. In labor and delivery, especially, you get attached to your patient and you really want to stay and be there for the delivery. But as I look back, did I really want to stay there because I love the patient and wanted to see the baby? Part of that, yes. But also, sometimes I would stay 3 hours past or wait until the baby was here and delivered because I didn't really trust the incoming nurse or team to deliver and help that patient like I wanted to. And I would leave and think what ifs. And it was often that I would even call several hours later and say, "How did it go? How was the delivery?" And I would want to know all of the details. So, this is my nervous system being in sympathetic overdrive, trying to protect against the loss of my own control. What would help is me just learning that I could leave on time and trust the next nurse and team coming on. And I could be okay with things feeling undone. And that did expand my window of tolerance. Some days I could do that, some days I couldn't. In the hospital, there are often codes, especially in the ICU or other areas where people are in critical condition. And sometimes after a failed code, a nurse or a doctor would lash out at team members for just moving too slow or not doing things exactly like they wanted to. And there, again, is a lot of emotion involved. Now that I look back, I can realize that this anger was really hiding fear and fear of failure and fear of personal attachment to outcomes of patients that they actually didn't have control over, as much as healthcare workers want to believe that we can control life and death. Sometimes that is out of our hands and we need to let that go. So, a fighting response here can just be masking deep vulnerability, deep feelings of loss and failure. And what I now know that we could do is encourage naming those emotions, encourage allowing those emotions instead of projecting it outward as anger, and learning how to process and accept the reality and not fighting against it. Let's talk about overworking when it comes to flight. A lot of times I would see and I would be a nurse who would just rush from room to room. Postpartum, I was always checking in on my patients, and this could be overfunctioning even when there are other people to help. I would often skip breaks. I've seen lots of nurses skip lunch and skip breaks and even get irritable when it's like, "Hey, why don't you go take a break?" "No, no, no. I need to take care of my patients. I want to do it." And this can be mistaking busyness for safety. And what would help is just saying, "I need a 5-minute break." And that could slowly expand someone's window of tolerance for stillness. Also, I remember when I was a new nurse, I would chart copious notes. I was triple checking to making sure that I had not made a mistake. And this, again, was part of my perfectionism. I often wouldn't take time to interact with other people, and I was spending a lot of time in my patient's room, but not connecting with them. I was making sure that everything I did was correct and the best that I could. And this is my nervous system in flight, again, trying to escape potential failure, learning to pause and ask for help, learning to pause and take a break, learning to just let things go and accept enough is something that I now know and try to do to help expand my window of tolerance in that area. Okay, let's talk about freeze. Again, freeze is not something that my nervous system goes to a lot, but I have seen it where people go blank and maybe do tasks robotically and they can't recall certain information, even easy information, and they just have that flat affect because they're stuck in the freeze response. This often is disassociation in the face of overwhelm. This is the disappearing technique where they just put something down and walk away. Grounding techniques can help, just practicing being in the here and now, saying 5 things that you see, 4 things that you can hear, 3 things you can touch, something you can taste and smell. can help bring somebody back into the moment. Okay, so let's just finish up with a few ways that I thought about expanding your window of tolerance just really easily. And let's talk about fight first. When you feel the urge to argue, control, fix, or defend, and what it could look like. And I actually have a download in the show notes that you can access this. So maybe you like to argue and be right or in control. Does that sound familiar to anybody? What you can do is just let someone else plan or decide something small. Perhaps you need to fix a messy house right now. All you women who can't go to bed without your house being perfectly clean, try going to bed with the house messy and just breathing through it and telling your nervous system there's nothing dangerous about having dishes in the sink. Okay, what about feeling defensive when someone gives you feedback? I recommend that you try saying thank you and just sitting with discomfort instead of justifying your position or justify what you did. What about always saying yes to avoid guilt or conflict? Well, say no and just allow the feeling of guilt without reacting. Just be okay with it. Okay, let's talk about flight. When you feel the need to escape, avoid, overachieve, or stay too busy, let's look at constantly checking your phone. This is a habit that so many people are in. They're always looking at their phone. Pause before you check your notification for a full minute. Just give your brain practice to wait. What about needing to keep moving, rushing to do all of your tasks? This is what I do. I walk very fast. My husband is very good at helping me to walk slowly on purpose. Take a breath in between activities. He's very good at this. Just slow down, just slow down. I'm like, no, speed up. Okay, what about wanting to over prepare or over plan? I'm actually going to be the PTA president next year at the middle school, and I am going to get a lot of practice doing this, delegating one small task to other people and allow imperfection and allow them to do it the way that they want to. This will be very good for my nervous system. Okay, how about all of us who work late every day and like to stay and make sure that everything is just right? Try leaving on time, even when things aren't finished, and just know that you can do it when you get back or somebody else can do it for you. Okay, how about saying, I'll relax when blank is done. Just take a short break in the middle when the task is not finished and being okay with things not getting done. What about all of us who avoid emotional conversations? Just name one emotion to a safe person instead of avoiding it. And then the last is freeze. When you feel stuck, overwhelmed, or disconnected, what can you do? So what does this look like? Procrastinating due to being overwhelmed. Do one tiny step. Open the file, write a line. What if you can't make a choice and you have decision fatigue? Well, just flip a coin and choose something small and take action, just one little action. When we are in freeze, we want to take small actions to tell our nervous system that we're safe. What about wanting to disappear or withdraw? Text a friend, go on a walk, reconnect inside your body. Zoning out or going numb, use sensory input like a cold rag on your neck, splashing cold water on your face. Cold is great here. Also smelling things, using other senses to re-engage your nervous system. And then what if you feel like nothing matters and I don't care and I don't care that I don't care? Well, just trying something new, like a new food or an activity, even pretending to wash your hands, rubbing your skin, gentle movement can invite your nervous system to move. So if you want this list, there is a link in the show notes. And thank you for listening today to my adventures about mountain biking and my healthcare adventures with expanding our window of tolerance. If you found it helpful, please share, write, and review, and I'll talk to you soon. Thanks for tuning in to Burnout Solutions. If you found today's episode helpful, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And when you're ready to stop working harder and start working differently, head on over to my website at www.monatippets.com. That's TIPPETS. And grab my free resources on rewiring your brain and nervous system for less stress and more ease. Hope to connect with you soon. Take care.